Hello, hello. What's good, everybody? How you doing today? Welcome back to another live. We are here during this international break where some international football has actually kicked off somehow, surprisingly. Uh, Brian Mbumo having a pretty good game, it seems. Been watching a little bit of that. And wow, yeah, he's playing pretty well, keeping up his form that he started with over here. But good to see you guys, Vlad, Naveen, Frank, Juan, Alex. How you guys doing today? I hope you are well. Welcome to the video. There's a few things that we're going to talk about. I want to talk through some of the potential progress, maybe that we've been making, whether it's real or not. I want to just briefly touch on that tactical video that I did, which I really, really hope you watch because I think it's really good work for one, but also I think you'll feel very different if you're feeling negative about United. I think you'll feel very different there. I want to talk about it a little bit, and one thing in particular that's stood out to me over the 3 weeks so far that is about as encouraging as could be. I do want to talk about another name that we could be talking about in January or next year. It's not going to come as like a huge surprise or anything, but certainly I would just, it's just certainly just something to talk about on that front. And I also want to get your views. Fans, people wanted to come on, give their thoughts on the transfer window, the first few weeks of the season so far, where you're at. So we'll give that opportunity as well for people towards the back end. Again, not going to keep it way too long during during these ones, especially during the international break. There'll be more to talk about, obviously, when we get back to some football. This international break is rough. It is rough, but I really appreciate you guys who do, as I said in the last one, who do stick it out. Okay. Can I get a shout out for my newborn baby and amazing wife, Helena and Alexander, the future Red? Well, congratulations and all the best to your baby and your wife, Pablo. Thank you for that. And congratulations. Ten Hag sounded like a disaster in that article. He is a disaster. People have said for some time, why do you always go on about it? Because people really do not understand just how bad. It's really funny, that Build article is everything we should have got in the Post United article. Everything we should have got, because that is everything that Ten Hag did at United as well, and nearly destroyed this football club even more than it was already in the dumps. He drove it deep, deep, deep into the mud. And I don't blame fans, because it's hard to know all of those things when, without the inside. But I did tell you that is a human in an alien suit, or an alien in a human suit who has no idea how to communicate with other people on this planet. That's for sure. Okay. I'm telling you that. Anyway, no, you're not late. Welcome to the show. As we get in, I'll obviously give a few more minutes here for some more people to kind of file in. It builds up slowly over time to the international break. People don't rush in, but they kind of go, you know, I see someone's live. I'll just pop in there, and it kind of grows over the first 20, 30 minutes. So yeah, there's an NDA with Ten Hag. There's also people protecting relationships and things like that. But so be it. It is what it is. We don't need to go on too long on that. But I'm telling you, man, this is where I want to begin, because I think it's relevant to the conversation. I had a thought the other day, and I've been thinking about it. And after I did the tactical review, I had another thought about it. And I thought, I was like, I'm going to come on today and I'm going to give a very, very strong take on something. Some people are going to agree and some are going to disagree. And I want to do a disclaimer. I am completely, utterly capable of and entitled to give this big take, big opinion, and then change my mind later. It's the one thing I'm allowed to do, and you're all allowed to do it too, is change your mind. Okay? Like we were talking about on Monday on The View, Ruben Amorim has given us all permission to change our minds. Can you believe that? It's an incredible thing you can do, is change your mind. But this is my take right now when I think about it. as I am today and how I feel today about certain things, I truly think that United need to stick with Ruben Amorim for the season pretty much no matter what happens. Bar like finishing, being back in like the 15th to 20th position or something like that. And I'm going to tell you why. It's not about the tactics and it's not about the system. These aren't the reasons why Ruben Amorim should stay at United. He should stay at United because what we've done in the past, I saw an interesting post that said, most managers are given too much time at United and we should sack managers quicker and all that. And I actually agree with that, believe it or not. I mean, if you've heard me talk about it before, I say that most managers, we wait too long, we give them too long. They should be gone quite a bit sooner. They're not showing what is working and all of that. However, what's different about now, what's different about today, what's different about this versus the past, what's different about where United are these days versus where we used to be, is that most managers came in and set out, they were hired to build the club themselves. And they were like, here, you're responsible for the club now. You build it. We're not going to do anything with it. We're going to sign crappy players. We're going to do all sorts of weird things. And they went ahead and essentially made their own mistakes in building it. This is the first time we've had, because of new management and new everything, this is the first time we've had a truly collaborative effort to rebuild and put together United's team and football squad for real for the first time. And even if people don't like his system, they look at, and they have concerns over tactics and they have concerns over this, they look at the players and they go, but we're adding good players. The squad is actually shaping up. We're signing good, high potential young players like Lamans and Benjamin Šeško. We're signing proven guys like Cunha and Mbumo. We're doing well with signings like Dorgu and Yoro and De Ligt and Mazraoui and all of these guys. And I look at that and I go, we're doing the right things. And Ruben Amorim has a huge part to play in that, because last summer, this is where managers are different, and why Ruben Amorim, I would say, is different to what we've had in the past and deserves this level of time. Last summer, when they went into rebuilding, this is how it all ties into Ten Hag. When they went in, they set out to do this. And with Ten Hag, they just met resistance. With Ten Hag, they just met constant pushback against the ideas that they want to do, the things that they wanted to do to fix this football club. He pushed back against a club-led system of game management. He pushed back against a club-led system of football. He pushed back against club-led signings. He pushed back against everything. When you look at that build report, you'll see that's all true. Ten Hag just does what Ten Hag does. And unfortunately, he's not successful at it. What Ruben Amorim has been willing to do, forgetting tactics for a second here, is be the guy that essentially pays for all of these decisions that are being made. And don't underrate the value of that, right? Don't underrate the value of that when you're building a squad. Because look at what we've done. Look at what we've done wrong over the years, right? You buy some players. We bought all these players for Ten Hag. The next manager comes in, doesn't want any of them. And he's right, to be fair. Amorim is right to get rid of everybody he got rid of. He was right. He was right. He was right to move them all on. He was right to get rid of them. He was right to Lamans. Yeah, he was right to get rid of all of them. He was. But you also look at, that's going to happen with any manager. There's a danger here. You want to, let's say you want to bring in somebody who's look at what Slot and Klopp did, what Liverpool did there, which was very, very clever when they brought Arne Slot, and they did one thing that was really important. Do you know what it was? Do you know what the most important thing they did in picking Arne Slot? And it's changed a lot this year, so we'll see how it works out. I'm not convinced by some of their business this year, but what they did in season 1 to go from Klopp to Slot, nothing. They did nothing. You understand that there's a huge value in that they had a team put together by Jurgen Klopp, a rebuild under Jurgen Klopp, and they said, Arne Slot, you're going to come in and you're going to win with that team. That's why we hired you. You win with that team. We don't want someone come in and rocking the boat. You haven't earned that. We've built something. It's hard to find managers to do that. It's hard to find managers to do that. It's hard to find managers who will follow through on that don't try to impose too much of their own ideas. You have to give him big credit for being a part of that. It's hard to find those types of managers. He's one of the first managers to ever come in from not a big team in league and come in and win the league. One of the only ones, because he said, all right, I can play a similar way, but I'm not going to turn the team over this summer. We're not going to do virtually anything. And they did that. What we're doing now, forgetting everything else, is building something in alignment with one individual where we know we're not going to buy players and then they're not going to work. We're not going to buy players and then they're not going to play. We're not going to buy players and then they're going to be on the outs a few days later and they're not going to be, in the team. So that's, to me, a big aspect of this. It was a gamble from Liverpool, but to a degree it wasn't. In fact, it was the least risky thing they could do if you think about it. What if they brought in Nagelsmann, for example, and he said, all right, I want to change half the team. That's a gamble. You've built something successful. That's a gamble. What if they brought in somebody else who wanted to make a lot of changes? That's a gamble. When you bring in managers, more often than not, they're tempted to assert their own ideas on players and things like that versus others. Otherwise, you got to go with, like, it's not so easy to go get guys. And people can say, oh, well, we can just, that's why we got to go for someone like Glasner if it doesn't work out with Ruben Amorim. Sure. Why would it be better? He might have the exact same problems we have now because we haven't finished a team. We haven't finished building, balancing, managing a team. He might not be so strong on some of these aspects as Ruben Amorim might be. He might end up looking exactly the same because at Palace, everything's been taken care of. At Palace, the recruitment was done by Dougie Freedman in a very continuous way for a long time. And the same goes for Brighton. You look at their managers. Graham Potter came in and it was like a mirage. Look at how poor Graham Potter is anywhere else. It's hard to know how that's going to work. But what Ruben Amorim is doing that I rate very, very strongly is it's the basics that we unfortunately haven't done for a long time. And yes, we can sit there and say, well, these are the basic things that should have happened previously. These are the things that, come on, like this is stuff we shouldn't even have to talk about. Every team should be doing this. Every team does do this. Every team should be, in these are the littlest things you've got to do, but we weren't doing them. We weren't. Who was willing to throw away and take this hit and say, well, you know what? I'm losing games, but I can't play these players. I can't pick these players. I can't do this and all of that. I can't do that because we've never actually committed to building a united side on a club-led basis. And we have a manager who's willing to ride that out. You think about him talking about quitting, and you realize if you kind of get down deep into it, you realize that part of the reason he even discusses it, part of the reason he even mentions quitting is because he knows he's riding out things that are ultimately to a degree outside of his control as well. And he may not be able to handle them or deal with them, but he's suffering through it like everybody else. And I think that in that respect, he is doing something that nobody else has done at this club before, which is to push their ego to the side and say, well, I'm just going to ride this out and end up where we want to end up. And I think we're getting there, and we're not done. We're not done. I mean, obviously, when you look at this window, of course we're not done, right? There's more to do. There's a lot more to do. We're not done building this team. We didn't get a midfielders this summer, but he's going to have to sit there and accept that and say, I'm playing with what I've got because we can't panic, because we have to stick to the plan and actually stick to it and actually build something. I think that's respectable. And I think we're off to a decent start. And I think that there's going to be highs and lows this year. And I think that it's going to split a lot of opinions over time. But I think that the damage right now of changing managers would be devastating to the positives of what we are doing. Because what would you get? Think about this for just a second. Think about this for just 1 second. If Ruben Amorim is sacked at some point here, okay? And if you bring someone else in, what are they going to try to do immediately? Because what message have you sent? What the message that you've sent is the short-term results are ultimately what determine your future. And the next manager can come right in and say, all right, we're playing for short-term results, and compromise so much on what you are attempting to build for the future once again, and have that push and want those kind of decisions and guarantees and go back to playing pragmatic football. That's what will happen if a manager is changed, because that's the message you will have sent to the next manager, to the squad, and to everybody, is that we're done rebuilding. Now you have to win games by any means necessary. We're not ready for that, man. We're not ready for that. That would be devastating to our rebuild. I think that we're about halfway there, and I think it's actually going to be going faster than we think. I think it's actually faster than I think. Keep in mind, James, the Ten Hag, people have said the same things. Yes, but there is a big difference. Again, a big difference. It is the first time that you have actually had a football structure in place in alignment with the manager, ever. Literally ever, because we didn't have a football structure really behind Sir Alex Ferguson. He was the football structure. He was the management, right? He was essentially a director of football and manager's skin. Obviously, he had an executive in David Gill who was supporting him. We've never had it. Under Ten Hag, we had discord and dissonance and everything that we were talking about in the beginning between Ten Hag and the management. So we were already going backwards. He abandoned his system even in his third season. Okay. I remember talking about why Ten Hag was ultimately under pressure, because it was less about the results. What they were very frustrated in, when he started off last season, is that he showed no sign of adapting to the club game model. I remember a really funny thing that happened. I don't know if you guys will remember this, but do you remember there was some sort of interview and he was asked about this club game model, because it was a big thing. We want a club-led game model. And he goes, and he there was some sort of commenter in writing where he was like, where he passive aggressively commented on this game model, like, our shared game model. Like he couldn't bring himself to say that he would play the club-led game model of football, that he would try to play that the way we wanted to play. That was what frustrated them more than anything, is that he was not listening to what they wanted in building. That's not what Ruben Amorim is doing. And in that sense, that's where we are on the right track. So that's how I feel about it. And ultimately, that's why I think one way or another, we've got to stick with it. I'm not saying this season's results don't matter. Don't get me wrong at all. I actually think we're going to finish quite well this season. But I think that the value of what he's doing has been massively underplayed in its effect on the team and where we're going. I do want to talk about a transfer thing here in a second, and then look at some numbers. And I have another commentary on the tactical side of it. But let me just do a poll. I think if we stuck with Louis, we'd be further ahead for sure. And Louis van Gaal is one of the perfect examples of this, DB, because I completely agree with you. I didn't think he was playing the right football for United, and for me, It wasn't very attacking. It was pretty boring, but he was doing this as well. He was prioritizing the rebuild of the whole club, and they chopped the legs out from under him, and that's the point. That's the issue. And the club cut the legs out from under him at that time. And that's why I'm saying this is the first time you've actually had that kind of alignment. All right. Let me do my poll. There we go. Let's see what kind of sadists vote for this. All right. But yeah, anyway, nobody should be voting no. But anyway, all right, let's talk about a couple of things here on the transfer front. And I appreciate if you guys can like the video, like the stream, all of that. And everybody who does watch later, please like and subscribe and do all of that as well. Again, it really helps. Obviously, again, the viewership during the window is less urgent. You don't have people like jumping in instantly to watch like the moment the thing goes, because there's no long term, there's no immediate breaking news or anything like that. So I really appreciate you guys, and I know that it's a little different. You trust Cox's, so if they sack Ruben, do you back it? Yes, I do. Of course, I do. It's not like I wouldn't back it. Look, all I can affect or hope to affect is fans. All I can hope to affect is you and my community. Okay, you know what I mean? All I can affect is you guys, and share my views with you. I can't affect what the club do, not yet anyway. We'll try at some point, but I actually hope they don't necessarily listen to me on too many things, because there's many things that I'm not an expert in, and they'll have always access to more information. I'm not too proud to try to think that way, or brash to assume I know more than them all the time. But regardless, what I'm looking at here is like, yes, I would back them if they did that, because they would make that decision. But I think as fans and as a community, we can not put the excess pressure on the situation. That's my opinion only. That's what I want. You voted no for the banter. Fair enough. By the way, I did see some people ask, why no Trafford talk this week? Owen just had something he needed to do personally, nothing weird or serious or anything like that, just something he needed to do. But we will be back next week for it, just because the international break. I think he and I kind of were both like, wait. And then anyway, some other things came up. So we'll be back next week on that. No worries at all. Transfer wise, a couple of things. It's real interesting. There's a whole big thing that came out from Duncan Castles on Semenyo. I don't necessarily know exactly what position Semenyo would play. By the time I was sort of talking about it at the start of summer, I'd already kind of heard it was off. I think that was the case, that it wasn't looking likely at that point in time due to costs and other factors and things like that. But United do really like Semenyo. And I'm not sure if it would have been Semenyo or not getting a striker in. Semenyo seems to be taking that next step this year. Fast, physical, strong, two-footed, all of that. Where would he play in this team if we were to sign him in addition? I'm not sure. Would we stick him on at wing back? Would he play at left wing back or something like that? I think he was an Mbumo alternative. I don't think we'll be signing Semenyo now that we've got those three forwards in. We have other positions of priority. However, that being said, on the transfer front, the positions of priority are 1 to 2 midfielders, 1 to 2 center backs, depending. Again, some of this is like depending on the players there, how they perform, how Bruno does, how Mainu does, how the center backs do. Does Bruno leave? Things like that. So 1 to 2 midfielders, 1 to 2 center backs, and a left wing back. A left wing back, as I understand it, is definitely something under consideration. Could also be a right wing back, but they want at least one more wing back next summer to work on. Okay, so that's those are the main kind of priorities. Now, in the midfield, there are 4 names now for the 6 that we have to think about for the future, okay, for next summer. And it could be that there's 2 of these brought in technically, but there's multiple names, and they may even be considered in January as well, as I've mentioned before. There's an obvious name to add to the list. We know Baleba, we know Wharton, and we also know Yeoman is an option and is somebody they will look at again and potential in the future. Wharton and Yeoman kind of play in that quarterbacking deeper role, kind of like Casemiro. Another one that they like to look at, and they've been kind of again considering getting some Prem proven. This shouldn't be a big surprise, but is of course Elliot Anderson. He is somebody that they will watch this year. He is somebody that they will keep an eye on this year. He is somebody that they will pay strong attention to because everybody else is too. Okay. So this isn't huge. This isn't crazy, but he is somebody that they will keep an eye on simply because he's very good. And Prem proven does matter to them. You can see them mixing in the experienced sort of Prem proven players and the guys from outside to make sure they have a good balance. Cunha and Bumo, Sheshko and Lummans. So it's a good balance there. And the view is that Liverpool and City are very likely to also be coming in for a midfielders next summer as well. So there's a few different models. Now, I don't know exactly which role would be considered for Elliot Anderson to fix, which he'd be better in. He comes across to me flexible enough to play in both, where you could certainly play him as an 8 next to a 6. You could play him as a 6 next to an 8. He's a bit short though, isn't he? But yeah, so I would kind of consider you've got like Ederson, and that's, I guess, a 5th name. Ederson, Anderson, Baleba, kind of Wharton and Yeoman, and you've got a mixture of things, and they'll just be watched, okay? Building out these bigger lists of players before they kind of decide, but also to give us options because they feel it's going to be a very competitive market. Liverpool do have a solid midfield, but there is an expectation that some of their players may leave next year, similar to Trent. We'll come back to that. I've said it before, but there's some of these Argentinians, man, they've got eyes for Spain. So back to that. Also, we have talked about it before, but certainly Buati, who we cannot sign, he will be 18 in January. Certainly Buati is on the list of people that they are certainly aware of him. I can say for sure they're aware of him, that there are people at the club aware of him. There's no doubt about that. So we'll see. Again, it's early doors, but there's a lot of names to look at and a lot of names to keep in consideration. And again, there's always the potential we go for 2, depending on what happens. But we'll be visiting the market again in January to take a look at that and see where we can go from there. So keep a lot of those names in mind. Watch how they do this year. Let's see if we approach on one of those players. But yes, building out kind of our big list starting the season. Because remember, the way that these things work is this time of year, starting from this end of this summer, going into the next one, we're going to get a big list, 10, 12, 15 players, maybe. Probably more, to be honest. But they'll maybe have a 10 or 12 or 6 to 8 that they like a lot. And they always will keep guys that they've missed out on that they still like near the top of those lists. As the season goes on, they'll narrow it and say, okay, yeah, that guy doesn't fit. That guy doesn't fit. If we're looking at deals in January, then come December or even November, we'll start making contact with some of those people to start kind of figuring things out and taking a look at their situation. So then, for summer, come February, March, we narrow it down, start contacting. So I'm looking at these I guess 6 players I've named there to say, if you start seeing how does it happen? Well, it's the same as it happened before this summer. We had this list, and then you start getting little reports on specific players a few months before the window, and it goes, that's when we contacted them. That's when we talked to their agent And that's when we got where we sort of moved. We know we kind of moved them to a smaller list, a smaller piece. So keep an eye on all those. Obviously, Wharton, Baleba, Yeoman, Ederson, Elliot Anderson, Buwadi. Keep an eye on all of these players for sure, and watch them as well. Kone, I think there's a hope that by end of the season, in this season, he can get a point in there. But let's just see how he does at the youth level. The youth guys are kicking right now. They're pulling up trees, but remember, we don't have a ton of games, unfortunately, and that's going to work against us a little bit on some of the youth ranks this year. But obviously, we'll see who ends up in training. So keep an eye certainly on some of those players, and then as we get closer to October, November, let's see what happens if we start, getting them. If we get anything's popping up about them. I wouldn't think too much on what goes on this week because some of it's just delayed stuff from the window itself. Okay. Goalkeepers, as far as I've heard, still from my side of information, United very much want to sell at least one of the goalkeepers, and I'm pretty sure that at least one of them is quite out of favor at the moment. I mean, it doesn't take a genius to say that, but certainly there's a real chance that one or more of them could leave during this window still before the Turkish and Saudi windows are closed and could depart. United would ideally like to move some of them on. Certainly that's something to consider. So yeah, there's been some talks and some inquiries from Turkey over a potential move for both Onana and Bayindir, but even a little stronger on Onana. We'll see what happens. We'll see. I think that the messages when we come back will be pretty clear, but there might not be time. I think the windows will shut before our next game, so it's hard to know if there will be time. But anyway, we will see. On the injury updates, I saw that Diogo Dalot picked up an injury over in Portugal, or at least was a little bit. Laman's new job is to unseat Bayindir. Yeah, exactly. That Dalot's picked up something a little bit and came back from Portugal, but obviously it does sound like it's not too bad on Cunha and Mount, as far as we know, not too bad. So we might be a little bit short. I think one of the things that certainly goes under the radar of our business is even if we're missing Cunha and Mount, we can line up a Šeško, Xerxes, and Bumo front three. That's pretty damn good. I would have considered that as a first choice front three not long ago and would have been pretty happy with it. So that's what having options does for you and helps. Yeah, I think Turkish sets on the 11th. Now, just looking at some numbers, because obviously there's been a whole lot of chat, and we talked about it a little bit last time in terms of progress and whether United are actually progressing. Yes, I know on Mount it's hard to know whether United are actually progressing or not. There's a couple of things that I want to point out here in terms of the stats. Obviously, there's good stats, expected goals, touches in opposition box, crosses, things like that. However, one of the best stats that I want to point out is one of the stats we are not on top of. Okay, because I've seen this before. I actually commented on this last year, and I said, there's a couple stats you have to be careful of. Last year, we were at this stage similar to where we are now. We actually did create quite a few chances in the beginning under Ten Hag last season. In fact, if you remember the West Ham game, he got sacked after it. We probably should have scored like 4 goals in that game. But there was a huge red flag, and it was in the end our undoing, because chance creation at the start of last season was not really a big deal, but something else was happening that was the big red flag that we're not seeing this year. Okay. And I'm going to show it to you if I can. Ready? Ta-da. Look at this. Last season, starting out the year and through the year, United were on top of the numbers for interceptions and successful tackles per match. And I remember specifically talking about Kabi Menu being first in the league in defensive stats and saying, this is bad. This is a red flag. It's a real worry. This is a problem. Okay. This is bad. You do not want to be on top of these stats. Look at the teams that are high up. For the most part, they're shit. Look at the teams on the bottom. There you go. There were your mostly best teams. Arsenal, City, Villa, Newcastle, Chelsea. That's like your top 5 of your top 6 right there is at the bottom of these stats. So you have to be very, very careful and make sure you're looking at the right stats. You don't want to be on top of tackles because one, obviously there's some odd ones like Ipswich who are just really bad, right? But when you look at it, like, again, you can see a much bigger correlation to being lower on the numbers on these than those. You don't want to be on top of that, even though it looks like a good stat, because it means you're under a lot of pressure. You're being forced to win the ball back a lot. That's the basketball we saw under Ten Hag. Attack, defend, attack, defend, attack, defend, up and down, up and down, up and down. And you end up exhausted, muscle injuries, conceding tons of chances, all sorts of shit like that, right? That's a red flag. And so when you look at it, it's like, cool, you can be attacking and you can have good stats on attacking, but you also don't want to be tops of defending. Now, Chelsea are doing well so far, but they're on top of that. I would worry about that a little bit. Now, if you look at this season, we're right where I want us. 18th, right where I want us to be, okay? 18th in this measurement. Let's look at tackles. Here, it could be better. We're a little too high, but it's early in the season. I'd like to see us having to win the ball back just a little bit less, right? Again, outliers like Newcastle who are doing poorly so far. This one, it's early on. But anyway, regardless, I don't want to see us at the top of these measures. If we're at the top of these measures, we have a problem. So if you look at it compared to last season, you can be an attack team that plays basketball that ends up having to do a ton of defending, or you can be a team that controls the game and attacks well. At the moment, we're closer to a team that is controlling games and attacking pretty well. Whereas last season, we started out attacking actually pretty aggressively, but we were not controlling games. In fact, we were blatantly out of control in those games, constantly having to try to win the ball back, and that was a red flag. It's better this year. It's a lot better this year. So that's what I have to say about it. It's early. It's early. It's very, very early. And it's not like we've conceded a lot of goals either. Like, we haven't been like bleeding tons of goals. We're also at the bottom in terms of saves per match, which is not a bad thing either, but it also means our goalie stinks because Arsenal are up there because their goalie is actually kind of good. But yeah, you don't want to be at the top of some of them. So right now we're at the top of the good stats and not at the top of the bad stats. So I'm pretty happy with that aspect of it. I also wanted to add, I hope people watch the tactics video. If I can tell you to watch it, let me find something else. If you haven't yet, do watch the tactics video I released this morning, because I want to talk about something really, really, really interesting. Okay. Last week, there was some moments I pointed out with Bruno Fernandes and, if after Fulham. Okay. And I was specifically looking for that against Burnley. And I've got to tell you, not only one, do I guarantee you will understand what Ruben Amorim is trying to do if you watch, especially the Fulham in this game. You will understand better than you ever have before exactly what Amorim is actually trying to do and why it's working and why we're very much not just a long ball transition merchant type of team, even though it is a feature of the way that we play. I hate to do it, guys. I'm so sorry. I always do it. But man, does it have shades of early Liverpool under Klopp. Things like going long, winning the second ball to progress. He used to do that a lot. very, very informative. But there's two things that I got to tell you this is what is most encouraging to me. Okay. If you watch the first tactical video I did, okay. If you watch the first tactical video that I did, I pointed out how against Everton in preseason, the center backs were not jumping. Then they corrected that. And in the game against Arsenal, the center backs started jumping. After the game against Fulham, I pointed out, what did I point out? I pointed out the 12 times that this system made opportunities that look like the one you're seeing on screen here, and we made the wrong choice. We went backwards. We were not aggressive. Bruno was passing backwards. Casemiro was passing backwards. What I saw against Burnley was that they corrected that. So when you say, when people look at it and say, oh, it's just Burnley. No. That's not the point. The exact thing that happened against Fulham, all these situations, the exact same attacking situations we were in against Burnley, we were in against Fulham. The only difference is we didn't actually make the passes, execute them, and make the right choices in that game. Against Burnley, we did. So what's really encouraging to me is that looking at it on a week-by-week basis, understanding what Ruben Amorim wants and what it's supposed to look like, not what it is looking like. What I'm seeing is that they are spotting the things that are going wrong and working on them. I think they understand it, and it's about experience. I'm not saying they're getting it after one game. I'm saying they would have spent all preseason learning, but sometimes you just need like that reinforcement of like, don't forget to do that. That's the thing we did poorly in this game. Jump on that. And that's what's impressing me a lot in looking at it on a week-to-week basis, is that they're fixing the things. I didn't even broke down Grimsby. Grimsby has nothing to do with system and tactics, and I will never change my mind about that for sure. But we're fixing the things that are wrong in the game prior. And I think it's not like they don't know. It's not like Bruno doesn't know to progress the ball to the wide areas. It was just like playing scared, or like just need to re-emphasize it or something, or just show them. But they do this. They have a meeting. They go through the video, all of that kind of stuff. So against Burnley, the biggest thing that I would say is in terms of what I would look for them to improve is to keep that center back aggressive, because I don't think it stayed aggressive long enough. That's one thing. I think they dropped off a little bit. The second thing is, I would hope Ruben Amorim looks at the midfield and says Casemiro is still not doing enough, because he isn't. That would be another thing. We'll see when and if that gets addressed. And then the third thing is that I think he'll try to keep Bruno deeper. That's because the worst moment in the game, and I'm surprised by this, but as Ruben Amorim's system has gotten in place more and more, it's become more and more obvious that Bruno should not be in the midfield or in the forward line. He needs to be in the midfield. When he plays in the forward line, he drops into the worst possible places all the time. And where we lost control of that game, even though the goals we conceded were mostly down to errors, defending, one, Dalot turning the ball over. He's like the outfield by India right now. There's good things that he does. He had good aspects, but I swear he cost us a goal a game. And by India dropping the ball. But besides that, even the slight lack of control for about 11 minutes in between the two goals was mostly down to Bruno being up front. Because when he played up front, he was dropping so far out of whack, and then Burnley didn't actually have to worry about him. He was going into the wrong spots, in my opinion, which was then pushing Mainu further up, which meant that our midfield was even more open than usual. So there's a reason why he likes him deep. Bruno had a better game, but it feels our level depends on how good Bruno is on that day. Yes and no, because I don't think that. Here's the thing, right? Okay, that I got to say on that point. I don't totally disagree. However, I don't think it requires the exceptional, because it wasn't just Bruno. Mason Mount was getting on it, distributing the ball out wide at the right times. this system is actually so fucking simple to a large degree, okay? What it needs is the midfielders to just make the right decision and pass the ball. So there's a couple passes Bruno make that probably other people can't, okay? If he's on a good day, because he's got an exceptional long ball on him that, like, yes, but to be fair, cool. Like, there's a couple passes he could make that others wouldn't, right? That open up more space than somebody else might. But the most of the pattern play all they require are basic passes Mason Mount was making, and he's not like a long ball, progressive specialist at all. Passes Mason Mount was making, passes Cunha was making last week, passes everybody in that team can make. And I do mean everybody. Passes Kobbie Mainoo can make. They all can make them. Okay. Bruno adds like a couple more special passes. There was one specific one to Mbeumo where it was like, holy shit, nobody else in that team would have completed that one, but he did, and that's great, and it helped create another chance. So yes, Bruno can elevate it. That's why you want great players, right? But he just needs to do the basics, and that's where you get consistency. Is at least if everybody knows what to do, then the easy things are done all the time, and how they're playing on that day is how it elevates it. It's the same with the 10s. There's two different things that can happen with the 10s. There's moments where the 10s get it, lay it off, the simple play. They got to make those basics. There's another moment where if the 10 can turn and beat the player pressing on his back, they can open up straight up for a goal because the defense will be so dragged out of possession. So there's basics. And if we do the basics, we will improve a lot. And we will continue to improve, and we will continue to perform well. If the 10s, if Ahmad especially, Cunha especially, and Mbeumo especially, and Bruno especially can add the magic, that's when we're going to see it go to a whole nother level. If they can be like on top of it, winning their 1v1s like mad and actually beating players. But that's any elite team has the basics and has the top players who will win those individual battles that take your advantage created to a whole nother level. And that's what we will see. So I don't think it'll require magic to beat most teams, but I do think it will. It always requires some individual magic sprinkled on top to elevate to title winning and things like that. That's why you need good players. So anyway, I hope you watch it because it was really, really fun actually to rewatch. It was easily my favorite game because I saw they were doing the things that you want them to do, and it was working. The biggest concern I would still have is Casemiro in that midfield when watching it, bypassed by Ugo Chukwu so easily. And it often resulted in situations where the left center back in Shaw was having to crunch in towards De Ligt, which meant Dalot had to come in more narrow, which meant someone was left open out wide, which essentially is how the goals happened. So, but a lot of that was a consequence of Casemiro being so easily bypassed. Something to think about, but it's mostly individual errors. You remove the keeper error, United would be doing very well either way. And again, for what it's worth, no comments about the simple thing that Burnley, like after Fulham about, oh, we just did this. Well, Burnley did the exact same thing Fulham did. That's it. Yeah, Mount won a second ball and sent it directly to Mbeumo, almost scored exactly. Burnley did the exact same thing as Fulham defensively and offensively. They surrounded the midfield. They went 4v2, 3v2, 5v2 at times. The only difference is we attacked the wide areas. That's it. We attacked the wide areas correctly. We spread the ball out wide correctly instead of recycling when we gained an advantage. And the center backs were a bit more aggressive, especially Luke Shaw. Much, much better game. I was very impressed with Luke Shaw. But Bruno had a better game than I thought when I watched it originally. Okay, let's do this. If anybody does want to come on with a camera, I have a reason for that, by the way, of the camera thing, which I don't actually want to explain. So you're just going to have to take my word for it. But if anybody wants to come on with a camera, talk about our progress, talk about how they feel about the window so far, here's the link. Come on through, and we'll take the last 10, 15 minutes to chat. I don't think there's going to be as many people as usual, but I want to keep this up as a little bit of a feature if anybody does want to come share thoughts. If nobody does, then great, I'll end it there and we'll be good to go. And if anybody does want to share their thoughts, some people were asking for it in the last one, then use that link and you can come in and join. and just give me your thoughts on things and all of that. But I'm quite excited. I think we've made it really well. We need a midfielder like Pogba and Baleba. Pogba and Baleba would be, to me, one of the most fun possible midfields that could be run out in a system like this for sure. Someone really energetic and somebody who has the progression and all of that from Pogba. But then again, just on that note, Pogba's like, Pogba would be, God, like Pogba on his day. There's literally not a midfield on earth you'd look at and say he wouldn't make that incredibly fun. You know what I mean? He wouldn't make that incredibly fun. Once I've got a camera sorted, I'll start jumping on. No worries. There might not be many people today. It's a quiet little day here, so I'll pin it just for now in case anybody does want to come in while we're still chatting here and share their thoughts. But yeah, thank you, SD. Thank you for that on the tactics video. I really appreciate that. Andrew, you want to come on and chat? Okay. All right, Andrew, how you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Good.
Yeah, there was one thing that I kind of wanted to ask you about, because my view on the midfield is we've left it because there's only really been one objective that they've made public: to win the title in 2028.
Sure.
Midfield is probably the most important for like sustaining control throughout a game, and we know control equals wins over 38 games. So
Sure.
from my point of view, when people are saying there's midfielders that are out there that we could get this year, it's not necessarily wrong, but I don't think it's in line with the objective that we know publicly that they've set. So, the likes of Baleba, we know he's the right fit.
Yep.
Even if it takes us 2 years to get Baleba and his partner, I still think it's the right thing to do to wait. It's painful because we want to win every game. We spend our hours at the weekend and in the week wanting to win every single game, but actually the objective isn't to win every single game, it's to win the title in 2028.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I actually think this summer turned out really well, because we know that Ruben's system just doesn't work without the 10s.
Yep.
We know you can sort of get away with the midfield as it is. We're not going to win a title with this midfield, neither
No
of
chance.
Bruno or Casemiro. But the system doesn't work without the 10s. So you had to get them in because it's passable with the current midfield, but not with the previous 10s that we had.
Yeah.
So for me, I'm seeing, and I don't know if other people are as well, the competence in the fact that they're able to say the system doesn't work without the 10s, but we aren't going to win the title without the midfielders. So let's get the 10s, give Ruben a chance to implement his system. The title comes next year, the year after, when we actually, buy the players that fit.
Yeah, I actually completely agree with this take. I think it's a great take, and I think it's, we've talked about it enough before the summer and through there. There's a reason they got a wing back and 2 10s as the first signings, and it's simply because, right, like you said, laying down the basics of how do we actually get this system in place in the first case. Like, how do we get the basic where we're not like having a huge gap? Like you said, it is passable with the midfield we have. We're seeing it. We're seeing the system play out this season. We didn't see it last year because we never saw what we're seeing from the 10s. We never saw, Cunha and Mbumo and Mount and all of them dropping in the way that we're seeing them do it now. We never saw a lot of the things we're seeing now last year. So it's like, these are the foundations. That's what we need first. Then we can move on and say, good, now let's upgrade the areas that aren't working. Because as you said, I do think the unit of midfielders is passable for them to play the system, not to win every game, but to play the system, like you said. And that's speaks to the point I was making about, Ruben there and what he's doing right and why he deserves credit for this, because he's willing to sit there and say, we ride out this midfield rather than get the wrong thing, so that we can lay these foundations in place and know that it's not going to work. So I think that's a really, really good take.
Yeah, and thank you for that. I think it actually answers why Shesko came through the door and Lomans came through the door, because in the context of this season, you buy Emi Martinez or you go and get
Yes.
Kane. But in the context of Project 2028, I think it's 2028,
Yeah.
Lomans could be the best keeper in the world by then. Could
Sure.
be. We're going to have 2
Yeah.
years to find out. Same with
Yeah.
Shesko.
Yeah.
He could hit 30 goals 2 years from now. He's not going to do it this year. He probably won't do it next year.
Yep.
But it's shooting for that goal. So that's kind of what I've been thinking about a lot, is how does it align with 2028, not with what I want every Saturday.
Yeah. Yeah, it's true. And I think it's important to note that that's why as well, they've insulated themselves. Not to say, I've said this before, but not to say they don't care what fans think, but they kind of don't, in a sense, because they can't worry too much about the week to week feelings of fans to then abandon, the long term for small, short term and fleeting gains. We've seen that too many times in the past. The panic that sets in from fan pressure, and you end up doing something stupid, and we're still paying for it years later.
Exactly. And
Yep.
the last thing that we want now, especially because we want to spend big on good players, is to buy players and then sell them at a loss, because I've just accepted everyone we buy, we're going to sell them at a loss. That's
Sure.
just what we do. And
Yep.
that's the nature of buying somebody who you think might be near the top of
Yep.
their game. It would feel like a waste to start buying players just to help Ruben Amorim stay in a job for
Yeah.
the rest of this year, compared to just being patient and saying, look, Ruben, we know you're emotional after the Grimsby game in particular, and this is probably the kind of conversation that they're having this week. Context 2028, not 2026. So yeah, I don't want to waste any more money, but I want to spend a lot of money, which is kind of my other thought here.
Yeah, makes perfect sense. No, I appreciate it. That's very, very, very logical, very sensible. Definitely agree with pretty much everything you said there.
Good stuff. Thank you.
Yeah, right on, Andrew. Thank you for that. Appreciate it. See you later. Okay. All right, Ethan. That was great. Very, very, very sensible from Andrew there. Like it. All right, Ethan. How you doing?
Good, man. How are you?
Good.
Andrew had a lot of really good points.
Tough act to follow. He's very sensible, huh?
Unfair, but that's all right. Same with your sort of opening address, was touching on a lot of things I was thinking of. Maybe I'm in the minority. I'm not too sure what we could have done better, to be honest. I guess timing is one thing, but in the grand scheme of things, a couple weeks here and there or a point dropped here and there, it doesn't really matter. So I think if you get a goalkeeper start of the season, sure, maybe you get a point, but you can't really judge things like that. So, but if I look at what we actually did do, I don't really count sales as part of grading a transfer window, because that probably either made a mistake or something's happened that's forcing you to get rid of a player. So I don't know why that should be seen as something you assess either positive or negatively. So sales I don't even think about. But in terms of incomings, is there any striker we definitively could have got that is better for the plan? Can't say for sure that there was someone out there better. Are there any 10s? Probably not. Were there any midfielders that you would have gotten over someone else that were actually available? No, probably not. So, and the one thing I think, I'm a big finance guy, so I'm into all that stuff. The one thing that I think is so impressive is that they were able to do what they did while also clearing the amount of space and setting themselves up for the future. The first time I ever came on and talked to you was on a playback stream last year, and we were talking about PSR space.
Okay. Yeah.
And how not using up all your space at once is actually the smartest way to go, which is how Arsenal can get a Declan Rice and things like that.
Yeah, so Liverpool could spend $500,000 this year, right?
For no reason. And other teams do that. Forest do that, where they're signing left and right for no real reason, because they're just going to turn over. Chelsea do that. They can boast about 300 million in sales, but that just means that there were players that you had on the books that you had to get rid of anyway. So there's not really an accomplishment there. So I think I don't see how we finished how this year, I don't see how we finish lower than 6th. I just don't see it. Newcastle, Spurs had a pretty good window, but they're top heavy. They have no defensive depth. If one of their center backs goes out,
which has happened a lot.
Yeah. So between Newcastle with an extra game in Europe, Tottenham with an extra game in Europe, I don't see how anything lower.
Aston Villa are a little bit shaky. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and even the teams that punch above their weight, Bournemouth are one of my favorites to watch. They're super impressive. They're not finishing higher than 8th. Even that would be incredible. And so other teams
they lost a lot of defenders and stuff. Yeah, they'll have a tough time.
6th, you get European money for next year, and then you go and get I forget the exact numbers you talked about at the beginning in terms of who we're looking to bring in next summer, but I know you've dropped some hints about the center back Zeno de Bost at Sporting.
Yeah, I would love to see us go get
number 1 on my list for next year. And I don't know whatever happened to Hayden Hackney. He was one of the guys I thought we could bring in this summer, but he'll have 1 year left, only 24 next year. Michael Carrick, sort of trained players.
Yeah.
Those two would be on the list for either January or next summer, and that's when you can really start to go big. So I'd give this window a 9. Again, sales don't matter to me; they don't really count. Between the finance space they've created and the sustainability, and bringing in probably the best options at each position they wanted, maybe goalkeeper, you could have got someone else, but I don't think Martinez is the right cultural fit for our team based on his history and everything. Good player, but volatile at the least.
And temporary, right?
Yeah, and I don't think I remember you mentioning in one of the videos the last time we actually saw him play before the season started was getting sent off at Old Trafford. So
yeah,
it's not like he was going to come in and just be a magic silver bullet. But yeah, I say 9 out of 10 window, and I can't see us finishing lower than 6th, which gets us Europe and sets us up really, really well for the next couple of years. So I think we're really trending. I watch all the tactic videos are really interesting. At the end of the day, we put the ball in the back of the net a bit more than we fly up the table, and that's really all it is at the end of the day. So I think we're really well set up.
Yeah, agreed. Well, I pretty much agree with all that. Obviously, I think most people here will gravitate towards, I have optimism. I've got positive takes on these subjects. So I imagine most of the people who watch also, not everybody, but a lot of people will share that. And I pretty much agree with you on most of that. I think as well, one of the things we've seen so far in the start of the season is that it's one of the points I made. I don't think the league is very strong. I think it's outside of a couple teams, it's really chaotic. It's very messy. A lot of the mid-table teams have been ripped to pieces. A lot of the borderline teams, like we talked, Newcastle, Aston Villa,
Brighton.
Yeah, if you take even a look at Newcastle, they've essentially replaced Isak with Wissa and Woltemade with their money. I'm not seeing that work in the same, even close to what they were getting from
lost guys like Longstaff and midfield depth.
A lot of things they like.
Botman hasn't played in God knows how long, and they didn't actually get a new goalkeeper. So between Ramsdale, Nick Pope, who knows? The only thing I worry about has nothing to do with the actual team or the league. It's the noise would be a nice way of saying it. It's more than noise. It's just It's just ridiculous.
I know, and I
worry about is that filtering in, because I always used to think it wasn't actually important.
Oh man, it gets
year over year, it's infiltrated, and it's become not just around the whole league, honestly, and just being in England, and I've lived in England before, in the media there and everything, and there's nothing the English media like more than seeing something do well and tearing it and having a part in tearing it down. It's like they're like, crowning achievement is to bring things down, which is quite sad actually, but it's obviously no exception to that. So the only thing I worry about is sort of the United bubble being popped by something external where it really shouldn't have to be. Like that Grimsby result, in the grand scheme of things, it really doesn't mean anything. The League Cup was not going to determine any sort of barometer of success, either in the short or the long term, but it's a great opportunity to add noise and pressure and sort of gravity to something that's on an upward trajectory. So that's the only thing I think that could sort of knock us back a little bit, is if they give in to the noise and start, and if the players, there should really just be this really protective bubble around the whole club for as long as they can hold it, and that'll really, I think, help propel us forward.
I completely agree, and it helps if they can just win a few games more to push and stave the noise off while they're getting going, because until they're confident, they're going to be very susceptible to that kind of stuff. And I can tell you, it was this summer changed me in the respect of just how much I became aware of how much they're aware of, the players and all of that, to the level where I'm like, you think it doesn't matter, it does, and I think when you look at like, even I think about things like, does the all there's such a violent reaction after the Fulham game, after a 1-1 draw before Grimsby, and I start to think, why would they just show up to that game totally off? And I think about how everybody was talking before it, and I think it's like they were in the room with everyone there. It's like they were listening to all of that when they walked into that game, and the negativity, the pressure, the noise, all is just too much to deal with. And some of them, it's very new to them, and a lot of them, they're very young, and it's like, it's rough, and hopefully, we do our best not to contribute to it too much.
Hopefully the Wi-Fi that's been installed at Old Trafford that's actually works now. Hopefully it starts not working so well, so that after games or before games they can't even look if they want to, because that's the only thing I can think of. Last question, and then I'll head out. Any idea if there's going to be any breakthroughs sort of with a couple academy players in specifically the backup right 10 position? Because there's not really a defined backup for Mbeumo there. You've got Jack Fletcher, who can kind of play there. You've got Mantato, who can play there, even though he's more of a wing back. Lacey, if he stays healthy, you never know. I'm wondering if either they look to recruit there as sort of for a younger depth piece, like a Chris Rigg at Sunderland, who I think signed a new contract, but you never know with him. Something like that. It'd be nice to see someone start to break through there.
I agree. I think that certainly Shea Lacey has been one. I mean, everybody knows that at this point, but has been one pretty much earmarked for saying he's going to be good enough for the first team, and he's going to make it to that level. He's already he's playing games already at the under 21 level now. Like he pretty much skipped that jump, like straight in and then straight up, because he's that good and that talented. Obviously, between him and JJ Gabriel, they'll both probably end up in first team training at this point. Obviously for JJ Gabriel, he'll be a little behind that, but Shea Lacey is the perfect player for it in the long term. I mean, when you look at it just in the standpoint of not just because he's a good young player, he is that good. I mean, there's times we hype up the young players too much. Shea Lacey's been kind of like Kobbie Mainoo, somebody looked at since he was way too young for anybody to be talking about him, to be quite honest. But he is that good, and he would fit that position really, really well, in terms of the skill set and everything too. So that's probably the closest in terms of at the youth ranks, to come through, for that kind of position for sure.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to hopefully seeing some of those guys break through. Probably not till January once the FA Cup starts, but nevertheless, that'll be exciting.
Yes, thank you, Ethan. Appreciate it very much, buddy.
Cheers, man.
See you later. All right, Kerwin, you've been waiting. You don't have a camera, but you're here. I'll add you and give you. How you doing?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Perfect. Yeah, I actually do have a camera. I just haven't put it on.
Oh, it's all good. It's all good.
I've got just one thing to question, and that was something that the previous caller brought up. In your opinion, and this is based off my opinion, a question based off my opinion.
Yeah.
If we are going to bring in midfielders for the 2028 title challenge, I think we should at least bring in 3 midfielders that are going to take over the roles from Casemiro and Bruno, who might not be here. With that being said, if we are going to bring in 3 elite midfielders, should we be looking to sell one of Ugarte or Kobbie, or even both?
Yeah,
is that a possibility? Because I think it is. Yeah. I think that perhaps both could be on the chopping block at some point. What do you think?
Yes, I actually think your question has a lot of merit. With Kobbie Mainoo, I've kind of discussed that this week a bit, right? With all the noise around him, United see it as a two-way street with him, so we could start there, right? They haven't been pushing him out. They haven't been wanting to sell him. They do want him to become what he can, but there's a point he has to commit to. I'm not trying to, like, it can come across as like dumping it on the young player and things like that. Obviously, he's got to play more, and he wants to play more, and hopefully he does play more. If he doesn't commit his future to United, and there still remains questions by next summer, and he's and I think we'll kind of know by next summer where he's at, and how this works. That's one under consideration. And the same would go for Ugarte for different reasons entirely. They're serious about this 2-season thing. Ugarte, I still think he can turn it around. A lot of people don't. I still think he can. I think he's got potential. But he's got to play well. If he doesn't play well this season, he will be for sale next summer. They will be willing to move him on. They will be willing to move on anybody. If Xerxes doesn't have a good season, they'll look to move him on. So, there's a world where you end up needing to replace all 4 midfielders, even, in the long term, not necessarily all at once. And that's why it can change a little bit depending on how this season goes. They're probably not going to change all 4 midfielders next summer, but they will change Casemiro, and they're likely to change one of Ugarte, Bruno, and Kobe next summer at least. And then in the following year, it could be another. If Ugarte doesn't work out, you might be replacing Casemiro and Ugarte next summer, and then the following year replacing Bruno. There's a lot of things that could happen there, that could still happen on that basis. But yes, realistically, I wouldn't be surprised if we had almost an entirely new core of midfielders by the time end of not next summer, but the following summer rolls around. I wouldn't be surprised at all.
I agree. I think the entire midfield will be overhauled by 2028, and I think that there is a slim chance that Kobe or God, one of them will be there, at least one, but there's some chance that both of them will be there. I don't think both of them will survive. That's all I wanted to add. Great show, and let me just say one last thing to the fans out there. I think that everyone needs to support the team, and especially the players, and specifically Ugarte, because we know right now he's struggling with everything that's happening on social media. Just everyone get behind him, because we don't have players in midfield. We need everyone on board. Thanks.
Yeah.
Cheers,
Appreciate
man.
it. Thank you, buddy. See you later. Yeah, honestly, I think that's a bit of a fair message. Now, the window's open. We're not getting more midfielders. Let's just get behind them. We have a new goalkeeper, so we can, we don't have to, we know we can see different players in other positions, but man, we don't have more midfielders. We really do have to back the guys we've got right now, and something we can all, myself included, be better at. But I do, again, in speaking, as we talked about with Ethan and others, it does matter. They do hear these things. It does affect them. And I know that for sure. So hopefully a couple wins will spread some positivity too, but I know we'll do what we can. Let's go. We've got to run here from here until January to try to do the best to be in a good position. Okay. But yeah, appreciate that. That was 3 wonderful calls, wonderful questions, wonderful conversations to kind of wrap this up. I hope you guys have enjoyed this video, enjoyed the live. It's been a nice little calm, low-key one. We're certainly building something nice here. I hope it continues in that sense as well. And hopefully hopefully there's enough people out there who match up with what we do in this community, what we talk about, the way that we approach things in a sensible fashion, and all of that as well, in a genuine fashion as well, that there's enough for us to build something really big with all of this. But that was a lot of fun, guys. Thank you all for being here. Appreciate you all very much. And I will catch you guys later. All right. Have a good one. Enjoy the rest of your week. I'll be back. The rest of your day. I'll be back tomorrow to do something one way or another. Make sure to catch up on those tactical videos. Thank you all. See you later. Have a good one. Goodbye.